I am Emma, an American wife living a seemingly happy life. The upcoming class reunion has caused ripples in my heart. I heard that Jack, the man I once had a crush on, will also be attending. On the eve of the reunion, I dressed up carefully. In the mirror, I looked blonde, tall, and curvy. I was looking forward to it, but also nervous, not knowing what the reunion would bring. On the night of the party, the lights of the city twinkled, as if countless pairs of eyes were peering into everyone's secrets. I was dressed in a black, form-fitting dress that highlighted my tall figure. My blonde hair was casually draped over my shoulders, the tips of my hair gleaming golden in the light. The high heels I had carefully selected made every step I took full of confidence and grace. Walking into the party hall, the lively atmosphere came rushing at me, and familiar and unfamiliar faces mingled in the light. My gaze searched the crowd, and suddenly, a figure caught my eye. It was Jack. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, and the collar of his white shirt was slightly open, revealing his firm neck. His hair was neatly combed, and he was still as handsome as ever, except that there was a little more maturity and vicissitude in his eyes. Our eyes met, and he was momentarily taken aback, before a smile that had once made my heart flutter appeared on his lips. I couldn't help smiling back, as if time had suddenly gone back to my school days. He walked through the crowd towards me, each step like a step on my heart. "Emma, long time no see." His voice was deep and full of magnetism, with a hint of tenderness. "Yes, long time no see," I responded softly, my voice trembling slightly. We found a relatively quiet corner to sit down and started chatting about the past. Those youthful memories on campus were like old movies, constantly playing in our minds. We talked about the club activities we had participated in together, the days we stayed up late preparing for competitions. We talked about the pranks we played in class and the moments we were punished by our teachers. We also talked about each other's dreams, those youthful ambitions. As we talked, I could feel those feelings that had been buried by the passage of time gradually waking up. The tenderness and concern in his eyes made my heart flutter uncontrollably. His gaze lingered on me, as if admiring a precious work of art. His eyes fell on my blonde hair, and he said softly, "Your hair is still so beautiful, just like before." My cheeks flushed slightly, as if I had returned to the age of my first love. I also looked at him carefully. His face had more traces of age, but it also added a few more charming. A touch of melancholy occasionally flashed in his eyes, making me want to explore his experiences over the years. We got more and more involved in our conversation, as if everything around us didn't exist. At that moment, the music started to play, a melodious dance song. He stood up and extended his hand to me, smiling and saying, "Emma, would you like to dance with me?" I hesitated for a moment, but then I put my hand in his. His hand was warm and strong, holding my hand tightly as he led me to the dance floor. On the dance floor, we danced lightly to the rhythm of the music. His arm was around my waist, and my head was slightly leaning against his chest. I could hear his heartbeat clearly. Our bodies were close together, and I could feel the breath he exuded. It was a unique scent that mixed faint tobacco and men's perfume, which intoxicated me. As the music rose and fell, our dance became more and more in sync. His eyes never left mine, and they were full of deep affection. I felt as if I had lost myself in his eyes, forgetting that I was already a married woman. At that moment, I knew only that the feelings I had for him had never really gone away. When the dance ended, we returned to our seats, both of us a little out of breath. His hand still hadn't let go of mine, and we just looked at each other in silence. Suddenly, his phone rang, breaking the beautiful atmosphere. He glanced at the phone, a hint of hesitation flashing across his face, but he still answered the call. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end of the line, but I could tell from his expression that it seemed to be someone very important. After he hung up, he looked a little apologetic and said, "Emma, I'm sorry, but I have something urgent to take care of, so I may have to go first." I felt a little let down, but I still smiled and said, "That's okay. You go take care of it." He stood up, looked at me deeply, and said, "Emma, I'm glad to see you again. We'll talk next time." With that, he turned and left. I looked at his back and my heart was filled with mixed emotions. I didn't know what this parting meant or where our relationship would go. But I knew that from this moment on, my life would no longer be peaceful, and that awakened feeling would set off a huge wave in my heart. I sat alone in my seat, my thoughts a million miles away. The hustle and bustle around me didn't matter. I was in my own world. Suddenly, my husband called. I picked up the phone and heard his familiar voice, and a wave of guilt washed over me. I pretended to be calm and chatted with him for a while. After hanging up, I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I had a family and responsibilities, but Jack's appearance had sent ripples through my otherwise peaceful life. I didn't know if I could hold on to my principles or return to the life I had before. Just as I was racking my brains over this, an old school friend of mine came over and started chatting with me. We talked about our lives and our feelings about the reunion. I tried to calm my emotions and chat happily with her. But in my heart, I was still thinking about Jack, about our encounter, and about the romantic dance music. After the party, I walked home alone. The night wind felt cool on my face. I looked at my shadow under the street lamp and felt a myriad of emotions. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew that I could no longer ignore the feelings in my heart for Jack. When I got home, my husband was already asleep. I tiptoed into the room, looked at his sleeping face, and felt full of guilt. I lay in bed, but I couldn't sleep. Jack's image kept popping up in my mind. His smile, his eyes, his voice, all of it was unforgettable. I kept asking myself in my heart, what should I do? Should I continue to stick to my marriage, or should I face my feelings bravely? This question plunged me into deep pain and confusion. I didn't know if I could find an answer, or how I should go about the future. But I knew that from this moment on, my life had changed, and I would face an unprecedented emotional test. Since our reunion at the party, Jack has been asking me to meet up with him frequently. At first, I was torn and hesitant. After all, I am a married woman, and the thought of betraying my marriage was like a sharp knife, stabbing my conscience from time to time. But whenever Jack's gentle voice sounded on the other end of the phone, all my reason would instantly crumble, and I would inexplicably agree to meet him. For our first meeting, we chose a quiet cafe in the city. I carefully selected a light blue dress, paired with a pair of simple white heels. My long hair was worn loose, and I exuded the elegance of a mature woman. When I walked into the cafe, Jack's gaze was instantly drawn to me. He stood up, his eyes full of surprise, and smiled as he pulled out a chair for me. After sitting down, we ordered 2 cups of coffee and began a relaxed conversation. Sunlight poured in through the window, creating a warm and romantic atmosphere. Jack's voice was low and full of magnetism as he reminisced about our student days. The little details that I had forgotten came to life under his narration. He talked about the confident way I answered questions in class, and about the enthusiasm with which I cheered for my class at the sports day. Every word was like a key that opened the door to my memories, bringing back emotions that had been buried for a long time. After that, our meetings became more and more frequent. We strolled together through the streets and alleys of the city, passing by places full of memories. Once, we came to the entrance of the school where I had once studied. Looking at the familiar school gate, I had mixed feelings. Jack gently took my hand, and we walked slowly along the school wall. He pointed in the direction of the playground and said, "Remember? We used to watch the stars together there, and you said that your biggest dream was to travel the world." I looked at him, my eyes filled with emotion. At that moment, it felt as if time had stopped. Over the course of our time together, Jack has shown me great care. Whenever I feel tired or unhappy, he is always the first to notice and comforts me with gentle words. When I am sick, he will personally make me chicken soup and deliver it to my door. When I encounter difficulties at work, he will patiently listen to my troubles and give me his most sincere advice. These actions made me increasingly dependent on him, and also made the feelings I had for him grow deeper and deeper. However, every time we parted, I would fall into deep conflict and self-blame. I looked at my husband's busy figure at home, and my heart was full of guilt. My husband is a kind and considerate person who has always loved me deeply and quietly sacrificed for our family. but I was entangled with another man outside, and this feeling of betrayal made me suffer terribly. One night, Jack and I were walking along the river. The moonlight shone on the water, making it shimmer. Jack suddenly stopped and looked at me deeply, his eyes full of love. He gently pulled me into his arms and whispered, "Emma, I know this is wrong, but I really can't control my feelings. I've liked you for a long time, ever since we were students." My heart raced. His words moved me and scared me at the same time. I was moved because it turned out that he had always had special feelings for me, and I was scared because I didn't know how to deal with these feelings, let alone how to deal with my husband. I tried to push him away, but he held me tightly and refused to let go. His lips gently landed on my forehead, and at that moment, all my reason was thrown into the clouds. I closed my eyes and immersed myself in the sudden romance. However, just then, my phone suddenly rang, and it was my husband calling. I suddenly opened my eyes as if I had been awakened, and quickly broke free from Jack's embrace. I answered the phone and heard my husband's concerned voice asking me when I would be home. I stammered and replied that I would be right back. After hanging up, I looked at Jack, my heart filled with guilt and unease. Jack seemed to sense my change, and a flash of disappointment crossed his eyes, but he forced a smile and said, "It's okay, you go home first, we'll talk later." I hurriedly left the riverbank and returned home. My husband saw me come in and smiled, asking where I had been. I stammered an answer, saying I had been with friends, and I couldn't look him in the eye. That night I lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I kept asking myself, what on earth am I doing? If I go on like this, I'll not only hurt my husband, I'll hurt myself too. However, when Jack called me again the next day, I once again agreed to meet him. I knew that I had already fallen into an emotional whirlpool from which I could not extricate myself. The more I tried to struggle, the deeper I sank. Every time I was with Jack, I could feel an unprecedented happiness and bliss, but when I returned home and faced my husband, I was again overwhelmed by endless guilt and self-blame. This contradictory life made me miserable, and I began to become anxious and restless. I didn't know where this relationship would ultimately lead, nor did I know if I still had the courage to face it all. I wavered between love and responsibility, unable to find a way forward, and could only let myself drown in these complex emotions, waiting for fate to decide. During the days when I met Jack frequently, I felt like I was in an illusory dream, intoxicated by the tenderness and love he gave me. Although internal conflicts and struggles arose from time to time, they were no match for the sweet temptation. However, the twists and turns of fate always come so unexpectedly, mercilessly awakening me from this beautiful dream. It was a sunny afternoon when Jack invited me to his home. I carefully selected a pale pink dress and put on a delicate makeup before heading over with joy in my heart. Along the way, beautiful memories of spending time with him kept popping up in my mind, and I looked forward to an even sweeter encounter. When I entered Jack's home, a light fragrance greeted me, and the room was simply but warmly decorated. He greeted me with a smile, his eyes full of tenderness, instantly making me forget all my worries. We sat on the sofa, drinking coffee and chatting happily. He told me some interesting stories from work, which made me laugh out loud. At that moment, I felt like the happiest woman in the world. However, just as I got up to visit his study, the appearance of an object made my smile freeze instantly. In the drawer of his desk, I accidentally found a photo. It was a close-up photo of Jack and a woman, leaning on each other with happy smiles on their faces. My heart sank, and an ominous feeling came over me. I held the photo in my hands trembling slightly, and slowly walked back to the living room. Jack's face instantly turned pale when he saw the photo in my hands, and a flash of panic crossed his eyes. I suppressed the grief in my heart and questioned him, "Who is this woman?" Jack was silent for a moment, sighed deeply, and said slowly, "Emma, she is my ex-wife. She just came back to me and wants to get back together with me." Hearing his words, my heart felt as if it had been hit hard by a heavy hammer, and a sharp pain struck. It turned out that when I thought we had a special relationship, I was just a substitute for him when he was in between relationships. I looked at him angrily, my eyes full of tears, and said in a trembling voice, "Jack, why didn't you tell me earlier? Do you know how much inner torment I have endured for you? I betrayed my husband and gave up my principles, but you have been cheating on me all along." Jack tried to explain. He walked up to me and tried to take my hand, but I angrily shook him off. His eyes were full of guilt and helplessness. He said, "Emma, I didn't mean to hide it from you. I really did like you at first, but when she came back for me, I was also conflicted. I know I hurt you, but I really didn't know what to do." I looked at him, my disappointment and anger reaching a climax. I had once thought that he was the one I could love without reservation, but now he had broken my heart. I remembered the days I had spent with him, the sweet words, the affectionate glances, and realized that they had all been a sham. I turned to leave, but Jack grabbed my arm and begged, "Emma, don't go. I know I was wrong, but I really don't want to lose you. I'll handle things with her, so please give me another chance, okay?" I stopped in my tracks and looked at him with a determined expression in my eyes. "Jack, it's over between us. I won't give you the chance to hurt me again. I have my dignity, and I can't go on like this anymore." After saying this, I broke free from his grasp and walked out of his house without looking back. Walking home, tears kept welling up in my eyes. I felt incredibly sad and desperate, not only because of Jack's cheating, but also because I was disappointed in myself. How could I have been so stupid as to fall so easily for an unwanted relationship and hurt the husband who had always loved me so much? When I returned home, I locked myself in my room and cried my heart out. I thought about the tenderness and consideration of my husband and the good times we had spent together. And I, because of a moment of impulse and loss, almost destroyed it all. In the following days, I shut myself away and did not want to communicate with anyone. I constantly reflected on my actions, filled with remorse. I knew that I had to get out of this painful relationship as soon as possible and face my life and my husband again. Jack called and messaged me many times, apologizing and asking for forgiveness, but I didn't respond. I knew that there was no going back. The hurt from this relationship would take a long time to heal. During this painful time, I also began to reevaluate my own marriage. I realized that I had been neglecting my husband's feelings and not showing him enough care and love. I decided that I would try to make up for my mistakes and regain the happy home we once had. I started to actively communicate with my husband and care about his work and life. I cooked his favorite meals for him, and I went to the movies and took walks with him. Gradually, our relationship eased up a bit. Although I know that it will take time to completely heal the pain in his heart, I am willing to prove my love and loyalty to him with my actions. And for Jack, I have gradually let go of the resentment in my heart. I understand that this experience is a lesson in my life, which has made me understand myself more clearly and the importance of cherishing the people in front of me. I believe that time will heal everything, and I will regain the confident, happy self I once was. After leaving Jack's house, I felt like a kite with a broken string, swaying in the emotional storm, unable to find my bearings. It was late when I got home. The lights in the house were soft, and my husband was sitting on the sofa, intently reading a book. His figure looked a little tired in the light, but it was so warm and familiar. Seeing me come home, he put down the book, got up, and walked towards me. His face was concerned, and he asked softly, "Emma, what's wrong? You look so pale." I looked at him and suddenly couldn't tell the prepared lie. Guilt welled up in my heart. I could no longer control myself, tears welled up in my eyes, and I threw myself into his arms, choking and saying, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." My husband patted my back gently, without saying a word, just quietly staying with me. When I had calmed down a little, I gathered my courage and told him everything that had happened with Jack. I told him about the reunion at the class reunion, our frequent meetings, and my internal struggle and eventual discovery that Jack had cheated on me. I spoke very slowly, and every word felt like a heavy hammer, smashing into my heart. After I finished, I didn't dare look him in the eye, just lowered my head and waited for his anger and accusations. However, after a long time, he didn't say anything. I carefully raised my head, but I saw his eyes full of pain and understanding. He sighed gently and said, "Emma, I know this period of time has been very painful for you. In fact, I have long sensed that something is wrong with you. I have been waiting for you to tell me yourself. I believe you will make the right choice." I looked at him in surprise, and tears once again blurred my vision. I asked him, "Don't you blame me? I betrayed you. I did such a terrible thing." He smiled, gently wiped away the tears on my face, and said, "I don't blame you. Everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to recognize and correct them. I know you still love this family and me from the bottom of your heart. Let's face it together and get through this difficult time together, okay?" My husband's tolerance and understanding made me feel even more guilty, but also his deep love for me. From then on, I decided to try to make up for my mistakes and regain the happiness we had together. I started to take better care of our home. Every morning, I would get up early to prepare a hearty breakfast for my husband. Watching him eat with satisfaction, I felt incredibly happy. I would clean the house carefully to make every corner of the house full of warmth. I would also take the initiative to accompany him to participate in some of his favorite activities, such as watching football matches and listening to concerts. After work, I would also pay more attention to my husband's life. I would pay attention to his physical condition, remind him to rest on time, and prepare nutritious meals for him. I would share with him the little things in my work and life, and listen to his troubles and joys. Our communication has become more and more frequent, and our feelings have become deeper and deeper. However, that past experience is like a scar, slowly healing but occasionally still causing a dull pain. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I will recall those days with Jack alone, filled with remorse and self-blame. I will constantly ask myself why I was so impulsive and why I gave up my happiness so easily. In order to let go of the past completely, I began to attend some counseling sessions to learn how to face my emotional problems and how to better manage my marriage. During the course, I learned a lot about communication, trust, and understanding, which made me understand how to love my husband and maintain our family better. At the same time, I also began to re-examine my life and values. I realized that happiness is not about pursuing illusory passion and romance, but about cherishing the people around you and making the most of ordinary life. I no longer fantasize about unrealistic love, but pay more attention to cultivating the relationship with my husband. As time passed, my relationship with my husband grew better and better. We spent a lot of wonderful times together, and the conflicts and pain of the past gradually became a thing of the past. We traveled together, enjoyed good food together, and shared the joys and sorrows of life together. In the process, I felt true happiness and contentment. Although the experience of the class reunion brought me great harm, it also made me grow a lot. It made me understand the preciousness of marriage and taught me to cherish the people in front of me. I also learned how to face my own mistakes and learn from my failures. Now, whenever I think back on that experience, I feel not resentment or pain, but only gratitude. I am grateful to my husband for his tolerance and understanding, and I am grateful for the experience, which has made me more mature and stronger. I believe that in the days to come, I will cherish our marriage even more, love my husband even more, and keep our family forever full of happiness and warmth. And that past with Jack will forever remain a secret in my heart, a constant reminder to cherish what I have now.